Ma'am, are you okay? The voice came first, low, urgent, steady enough to cut through the late afternoon traffic and the cold October wind sweeping down Madison Avenue. Nathaniel Brooks stopped mid-step, one polished shoe frozen on the granite stairs outside St. Vincent Medical Center, his hand still gripping the strap of his leather briefcase. Across the street, beneath the weak yellow glow of a flickering bus stop light, a woman leaned heavily against a teenage boy in a torn gray hoodie, her body sagging into him like she could barely stay upright. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed instantly. The boy looked homeless, worn sneakers, frayed sleeves, a duffel bag at his feet that looked more like a pillow than luggage. The woman, pale and trembling, clung to his shoulder with both hands. From where Nathaniel stood, it looked wrong. Dangerous, even. Instinct hit before reason. He crossed the street fast, his coat snapping in the wind behind him, his heartbeat pounding harder than it had during the $1 million hospital board meeting he'd just left. "Hey!" Nathaniel called out sharply. "Step away from her." The boy turned, startled but calm, one arm still steadying the woman so she wouldn't lose her balance. His eyes were dark, tired, older than they should have been. Nathaniel stepped closer, his jaw tight. "Is everything all right here?" The woman lifted her head, strands of blonde hair stuck to her damp forehead, her breathing uneven. For one long second, Nathaniel saw confusion in her eyes. Then recognition. Then disbelief. "Nathaniel?" she whispered. He blinked. Evelyn Harper. He knew her. Not well, but enough. She worked in the pediatric wing, volunteer coordinator. Kind. Reliable. Always carrying coffee for everyone else before herself. Nathaniel looked from Evelyn to the boy, then back to her. "What happened?" he asked, his voice lowering. Evelyn's hand tightened around the teenager's sleeve, almost protectively. Her lips trembled, but when she spoke, her voice carried something stronger than exhaustion. "Don't," she said softly. "Don't look at him like that." Nathaniel frowned. The boy shifted slightly, like he was ready to leave, uncomfortable under the weight of judgment. Then Evelyn straightened just enough to look Nathaniel directly in the eye. "He's my hero." The words landed harder than Nathaniel expected. The city noise seemed to thin around them. Car horns faded. Footsteps blurred. For a moment, all Nathaniel could hear was the ragged sound of Evelyn trying to catch her breath and the quiet patience of the boy beside her. Nathaniel stared at him now, really stared. 16, maybe 17. Thin frame. Cold red hands. A backpack patched together with duct tape. But there was something else there. Not fear. Not guilt. Just concern. Real concern. "Hero?" Nathaniel repeated, almost unable to believe it. Evelyn nodded, swallowing hard. "If he hadn't stopped." Her voice broke, and she glanced at the boy as if searching for strength in his silence. The teenager looked away, embarrassed, like being called a hero was the last thing he wanted. Nathaniel felt something unfamiliar press against his chest. Doubt. Because for the first time in years, he realized he may have been completely wrong about what he was seeing. And standing there beneath the cold Manhattan sky, beside a boy with nothing but worn shoes and a tired face, Nathaniel Brooks had no idea that the next 5 minutes would change everything he believed about worth, kindness, and what it really meant to save someone. The wind cut sharper now, threading between the glass towers and steel traffic lights, carrying the smell of rain and hot pavement. Nathaniel Brooks stood motionless, staring at the boy as if the answer might be written somewhere in the frayed seams of his hoodie. The kid shifted his weight, keeping one hand near Evelyn's elbow, steady but careful, like he was ready to catch her if her knees gave out again. Nathaniel glanced at Evelyn, still pale, her breath shallow. "What do you mean, he is your hero?" Nathaniel asked, his voice quieter now, less certain than before. Evelyn swallowed, pressing a hand to her chest as she fought to steady herself. "I was walking back from the pharmacy," she said, her voice thin from exhaustion. "About 3 blocks from here. I started feeling dizzy. My vision got blurry. I thought I could make it back." Her eyes drifted toward the sidewalk as if replaying it. But I could not. Nathaniel felt his stomach tighten. He knew that look. Embarrassment. Vulnerability. The kind people hated showing in public. I collapsed, Evelyn said. Not all the way. Just enough that I could not stay on my feet. Nathaniel looked at the teenager again. The boy stayed quiet, his eyes fixed on the street, almost like he did not want to hear himself being talked about. And he found you? Nathaniel asked. Evelyn shook her head. No. He stopped. That word hit differently. Stopped. Nathaniel glanced at the river of people moving past them, coats pulled tight, phones glowing in their hands, everyone moving fast, everyone headed somewhere. No one was looking their way. No one had stopped now either. Evelyn's voice trembled. People walked around me like I was not there. Nathaniel felt something cold settle in his chest. He had seen it before. New York had a way of teaching people not to look too long. But he stopped, Evelyn repeated, looking at the boy. He sat with me on that sidewalk for almost 40 minutes. Nathaniel's eyes widened. 40 minutes? The boy finally spoke, his voice low and steady. It felt longer. Nathaniel looked at him. What is your name? The boy hesitated. Malik. Nathaniel nodded slowly. Malik. Evelyn managed a weak smile. He gave me his coat because I was shaking. Nathaniel looked down. Malik was standing there in nothing but a thin shirt beneath the torn hoodie, sleeves too short for his arms. Nathaniel suddenly noticed the cold on the boy's skin, the way his fingers had gone pale from the weather. Where is your coat? Nathaniel asked. Malik shrugged. She needed it more. Nathaniel had spent 20 years building an empire on numbers, contracts, acquisitions, percentages. Every decision precise. Efficient. Controlled. But standing there now, looking at a kid who owned almost nothing and still gave something away without hesitation, Nathaniel could not make sense of it. Why did you stay? Nathaniel asked. Malik looked at Evelyn, then at the ground. His jaw tightened like the answer weighed more than the question. Because being alone when you are scared feels longer than time. The words were simple. Honest. And they landed somewhere deep in Nathaniel's chest. Evelyn reached for Malik's sleeve again, her fingers weak but certain. He called the ambulance, she said. Stayed until they checked me. Walked me here when I said I did not want to ride. Nathaniel looked at the hospital doors behind him, less than 50 yards away, and suddenly the distance felt enormous. 40 minutes. Cold sidewalk. A stranger staying when no one else would. Nathaniel stared at Malik, and for the first time, the boy no longer looked invisible. He looked like someone carrying a story Nathaniel had not even begun to understand. Nathaniel glanced toward the hospital entrance, its glass doors sliding open and shut as nurses, patients, and visitors moved in and out beneath the white fluorescent glow. Everything around him kept moving, but the moment beside that bus stop felt strangely still, like the city had stepped around it. Evelyn leaned against the metal bench now, steadier than before, Malik standing close enough to help if she slipped again. Nathaniel loosened his grip on his briefcase and studied the boy more carefully. Up close, Malik looked even younger. 16, maybe. His sneakers were split at the soles, the rubber peeling back at the toes. His jeans were faded thin at the knees, and the gray duffel bag beside him looked worn enough to have crossed half the country. Nathaniel had seen men in boardrooms wear $1,000 watches and still look less tired than this boy. Where are your parents? Nathaniel asked, the question slipping out before he could soften it. Malik looked down, his hands tucked into the sleeves of his hoodie for warmth. Gone, he said simply. Nathaniel frowned. Gone where? Malik took a breath, like he had answered this before and never liked how it felt. My mom passed 2 winters ago. Got sick. We were staying in a shelter then. His voice stayed even, but his eyes shifted toward the traffic like he was talking to the street instead of Nathaniel. After that, there was nobody left. Evelyn looked at him, her expression heavy with understanding. Nathaniel felt his chest tighten. And your father? Malik gave the smallest shake of his head. Never knew him. The city hummed around them, taxis hissing through wet pavement, brake lights glowing red against the evening rain beginning to fall. Nathaniel looked at the duffel bag. That all you have? Malik nodded once. Enough to carry. Nathaniel did not know why that answer unsettled him more than anything else. Enough to carry. Like life had been reduced to what could fit over one's shoulder. Where do you sleep? Nathaniel asked. Malik hesitated. Train station when it is cold. Church steps when it is not. Nathaniel stared at him. Grand Central was only 15 blocks away. He passed it almost every morning without seeing the kids sleeping against the stone walls. Or maybe he had seen them and chosen not to. Evelyn's voice came softly. He has been taking care of himself since he was 14. Nathaniel looked at her. How do you know that? Evelyn gave a tired smile. He told me while we waited for the ambulance. Nathaniel looked back at Malik. And you stayed in school? Malik laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Tried. He rubbed his hands together for warmth. Hard to make first period when you spend half the night trying to stay warm. Nathaniel looked at the boy's hands then. Thin fingers. Ink stains near the thumb. Not dirt. Ink. You right? Nathaniel asked. Malik blinked, surprised. He looked at his hand like he forgot the stain was there. Sometimes. Nathaniel noticed the corner of a notebook sticking out of the duffel bag. Bent edges. Water damage. Protected like it mattered. Poetry? Nathaniel asked. Malik shrugged. Math. Nathaniel paused. Math? Malik nodded. Numbers make sense. People do not. That caught Nathaniel off guard. For the first time, a faint crack opened in the wall he had built around judgment. This was not just a homeless kid who stopped to help. This was someone carrying grief, intelligence, and dignity in silence. And standing under the cold rain, Nathaniel could not stop wondering how someone the world had given so little could still choose to give anything at all. Rain began to fall in thin silver lines, tapping against the metal bench and darkening the sidewalk beneath their feet. Nathaniel loosened his coat and glanced toward the hospital doors again, but his mind stayed fixed on Malik. A boy with no home, no family, and somehow more calm than most executives Nathaniel had built companies with. Evelyn pulled Malik's coat tighter around her shoulders, the oversized fabric hanging awkwardly from her frame. Nathaniel noticed it then. The coat was too light for the weather, worn thin at the elbows, the zipper broken. It was probably the only warm thing Malik had. And he had given it away without hesitation. Nathaniel reached into his inside pocket and pulled out his wallet, flipping it open. Crisp bills. More cash than most people on the street would see in a week. He pulled out $500 and held it toward Malik. Take it, Nathaniel said. Get yourself a room tonight. Hot meal. New coat. Malik looked at the money, but did not reach for it. The rain tapped harder now against the bus stop glass. Go ahead, Nathaniel said, his voice softer this time. You earned it. Malik lifted his eyes. They were steady, almost too steady for someone his age. I did not do it for money. Nathaniel frowned slightly. That is not the point. Malik shook his head. Maybe not for you. Nathaniel stood there, hands still extended, suddenly unsure. Most people would have grabbed it before he finished speaking. $500 could change a week. Maybe two. But Malik did not even glance at it again. Evelyn watched quietly, her pale hands wrapped in the coat's sleeves. Take it, Malik, she said gently. You could use it. Malik smiled faintly, but there was sadness in it. I know. Nathaniel lowered his hand. Then why refuse? Malik looked out at the rain-slick street, headlights stretching long gold lines across the wet pavement. Because if I start helping people only when there is something in it for me, then it stops meaning anything. The words landed heavier than Nathaniel expected. He slid the money back into his wallet slowly, almost embarrassed. In 20 years of business, Nathaniel had measured value in transactions. Profit. Risk. Return. But Malik was standing in front of him, soaked from the rain, hungry by the look of him, and still refusing the easiest help he could take. Nathaniel looked down at the duffel bag again and noticed the notebook sticking out farther now, rain dripping off its bent corner. Your math book? Nathaniel asked. Malik nodded. Nathaniel tilted his head. What kind of math? Malik shrugged. Anything. Algebra. Patterns. Number theory. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. Number theory? Malik nodded once. Prime numbers. Sequences. Stuff like that. Nathaniel almost smiled. That was not normal 16-year-old talk. Who taught you? Nathaniel asked. Malik looked down. My mom liked numbers. Said if life ever got messy, numbers would stay honest. Evelyn looked at Malik with something close to heartbreak in her eyes. Nathaniel could feel it now, that strange shift inside himself. The kind that starts small, almost invisible, like ice beginning to crack beneath weight. This boy had nothing. No house. No certainty. No safety. Yet somehow he was still holding on to discipline, intelligence, and something even rarer in this city, principle. Nathaniel looked at Malik differently now. Not as someone broken. Not as someone to rescue. But as someone the world had overlooked. And for the first time in a long time, Nathaniel Brooks realized that sometimes the strongest people were the ones carrying everything alone. The rain came down harder now, drumming against the bus stop roof like restless fingers, washing the city in silver and gold beneath the streetlights. Nathaniel stood quieter than before, his mind replaying every word Malik had spoken. Across the street, the glow of St. Vincent Medical Center reflected in the wet pavement, stretching like broken glass. Evelyn shifted on the bench, color slowly returning to her face, but her hands still trembled inside Malik's coat. A sudden flashing blue light caught Nathaniel's attention. A city ambulance rolled slowly past the intersection, and Malik's eyes followed it. Something changed in his face then. A tightness. A memory. Nathaniel noticed. You said you called for help, Nathaniel said. How? Malik reached into his pocket and pulled out an old flip phone, the plastic cracked near the hinge, the screen scratched almost white. Found it 2 months ago, he said. Still works if you hit it twice. Nathaniel almost smiled, but Evelyn spoke first. He stayed with me the whole time, she said softly. And when 2 men tried to take my purse while I was sitting there, Malik stepped between us and told them to leave me alone. Nathaniel looked sharply at her. What? Evelyn nodded, her eyes serious. He protected me. Malik looked uncomfortable, rubbing the back of his neck. They left. He said it like it was nothing. Like courage was ordinary. Nathaniel felt something heavier settle inside him. He had been standing in a heated boardroom discussing investments while this boy had been out in the cold holding together the worst day of someone else's life. There should be footage, Nathaniel said suddenly. Evelyn looked confused. Footage? Nathaniel nodded and pointed toward the traffic light above the intersection. City traffic camera. Malik frowned. Why does that matter? Nathaniel stared at him. Because I want to know exactly what happened. Malik shifted. I already told you. Nathaniel shook his head. I know. His voice softened. But I think you are leaving parts out. Malik looked away, silent. Nathaniel knew silence. It was the language of people who had learned not to make themselves too visible. He pulled out his phone and dialed his assistant. Claire, he said the second she answered. I need traffic camera access from Madison and 42nd. About an hour ago. There was a pause. Now? She asked. Now. Nathaniel hung up. Evelyn watched him, puzzled. You believe me? Nathaniel gave a small breath through his nose. I believe something happened. Malik adjusted the strap of his duffel bag. You do not have to do that. Nathaniel looked at him. Maybe I do. The rain softened for a moment, and the city seemed to exhale with it. Nathaniel stared at Malik's face. There was something familiar in the boy's quiet. Not in appearance. In endurance. Nathaniel remembered being 19, sleeping in his office during his first startup, eating vending machine crackers, carrying the weight of survival. But he had chosen that struggle. Malik had not. A vibration buzzed in Nathaniel's hand. Claire had sent the footage link faster than expected. Nathaniel opened it, rain collecting on the screen as the grainy black and white video loaded. The angle showed the sidewalk from above. Evelyn stumbling. Falling to one knee. People walking around her. Not slowing. Not looking. Then Malik entered the frame. He dropped his duffel bag. Took off his coat. Wrapped it around her shoulders. Knelt beside her. Stayed. Nathaniel watched in silence, the cold rain forgotten on his skin. And then, in the grainy blur of city lights, he saw something else. Two figures approached Evelyn while she was weak. Malik stood between them, shielding her, not aggressively, just firmly, until they turned and walked away. Nathaniel stared at the screen, his chest tightening. The truth was right there. Quiet. Unnoticed. Honest. And for the second time that night, Nathaniel Brooks realized the richest thing standing on that sidewalk was not him. Nathaniel stood under the bus stop roof, rainwater dripping from the edge in steady lines, his phone still glowing in his hand. The traffic camera footage had ended, but the image stayed in his mind like a stain he could not wash away. Malik kneeling beside Evelyn. Giving up his coat. Staying when no one else did. Protecting her space with nothing but presence and patience. Nathaniel locked his phone and slid it back into his pocket, his jaw tight with something unfamiliar. Regret. He had walked across that street ready to accuse. Ready to assume the worst. And now the weight of that assumption sat heavy in his chest. Evelyn looked up at him, her voice softer now. I told you. Nathaniel gave a small nod, but his eyes stayed on Malik. The boy stood there, shoulders hunched against the cold, rain dampening the edges of his shirt. He looked exhausted, like the city had been leaning on him for years. Have you eaten? Nathaniel asked suddenly. Malik blinked. What? Dinner, Nathaniel said. Have you had any? Malik hesitated. Not today. The honesty in it hit harder than Nathaniel expected. Not dramatic. Not pleading. Just fact. Nathaniel glanced toward the diner on the corner, neon lights flickering. Through the rain, steam fogging the windows. It was one of those old Manhattan places that stayed open all night, where coffee never stopped pouring and the smell of grilled onions stayed in the walls. Come with me, Nathaniel said. Malik stiffened. Why? Nathaniel looked at him directly. Because you are cold. Hungry. And because I owe you an apology. Malik shifted his duffel bag higher onto his shoulder. You do not owe me anything. Nathaniel let out a breath. Maybe not. But I am still offering. Evelyn looked between them. Go, she said gently. At least get warm. Malik looked uncertain, his eyes moving from Nathaniel to the diner, then back to Evelyn. Nathaniel recognized that hesitation. Trust was expensive when life had taught you that kindness often came with conditions. No strings, Nathaniel said. Just food. Malik looked down at the wet sidewalk for a long moment. Then he nodded once. They crossed the street together, the city hissing around them in rain and tires. Inside the diner, warmth hit instantly. The smell of coffee, butter, and soup wrapped around them like a blanket. Nathaniel held the door for Evelyn and Malik, and for the first time that night, Malik looked surprised by the gesture. They slid into a booth near the window, rain streaking the glass beside them. A waitress came over with menus, but Malik did not even look at his. His eyes stayed on the water glass she set down, like even that felt like a luxury. Nathaniel noticed. Order whatever you want, Nathaniel said. Malik glanced up. Anything? Nathaniel nodded. Malik looked at the menu then, slow and careful, like he had to calculate permission before desire. He settled on the cheapest thing. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Nathaniel frowned. Get more. Malik looked confused. This is enough. Nathaniel leaned back, studying him. Enough. That word again. The boy lived inside limits so deeply that even when offered abundance, he reached for survival instead. Nathaniel ordered for himself, Evelyn ordered tea, and for Malik he added fries, pie, and hot chocolate. Malik looked uncomfortable. That is too much. Nathaniel shook his head. No. It is dinner. Outside, rain rolled down the glass and rivers, blurring the city lights into soft gold. Inside, with the warmth of the diner settling around them, Nathaniel watched Malik wrap both hands around the hot mug when it arrived. The steam rose between them like something sacred. And for the first time that night, Nathaniel realized this was no longer about gratitude. It was about understanding who this boy really was, and why someone with so little still carried enough kindness to save a stranger. The diner hummed with the low music of silverware against plates, and the soft murmur of tired New Yorkers escaping the rain. Outside, yellow cabs slid through the wet streets like streaks of light, but inside, the warmth settled deep into the booth where Nathaniel, Evelyn, and Malik sat beneath the glow of an old hanging lamp. The grilled cheese arrived first, the bread golden and steaming, the tomato soup rich and hot beside it. Malik stared at it for half a second, almost like he was making sure it was real. Then he picked up the sandwich carefully, not rushed, not desperate, but grateful in a way Nathaniel could feel without words. Nathaniel watched him take the first bite, the way his shoulders loosened slightly, the tension easing from his face for the first time all night. Evelyn wrapped both hands around her tea, her color stronger now. You should have seen him, she said quietly, looking at Nathaniel. While we waited. Nathaniel looked up. What do you mean? Evelyn smiled faintly at Malik. I could barely breathe right. I was shaking. He kept talking to me. Malik swallowed his food and looked down, embarrassed. About what? Nathaniel asked. Evelyn laughed softly. Math. Nathaniel blinked. Math? Malik shrugged, wiping his hands with a napkin. It keeps people calm. Nathaniel leaned back. How? Malik stared into his soup. Patterns. He spoke like it was obvious. Breathing follows patterns. Heartbeats too. If you can focus on a pattern, fear gets smaller. Nathaniel stared at him. This was not luck. This was thoughtfulness. Intelligence shaped by necessity. What kind of math do you work on? Nathaniel asked. Malik hesitated, then reached into his duffel bag and pulled out the bent notebook Nathaniel had noticed earlier. The cover was soft from rain and worn at the edges, held together by tape. Malik placed it on the table carefully, like it mattered more than anything else he owned. Nathaniel opened it. His eyes narrowed. Pages filled with equations. Prime number sequences. Geometric proofs. Probability models. Not schoolwork. Advanced work. Nathaniel turned another page. More formulas. Cleaner than some analysts on his finance team could manage. Who taught you this? Nathaniel asked, his voice lower now. Malik stirred his soup. Mostly books. Library. Internet when I can find free Wi-Fi. Nathaniel looked up sharply. You taught yourself? Malik nodded. Mostly. Nathaniel flipped another page and stopped at a full page of handwritten equations solving a market growth model. He knew that model. It was business forecasting. Where did you learn this? Nathaniel asked. Malik looked at the notebook. Found an economics textbook in a donation bin. Nathaniel stared at him. The room around them blurred for a second. He had spent millions hiring consultants, analysts, graduates from Ivy League schools. And here sat a boy solving advanced projections between sleeping in train stations and surviving winter nights. Evelyn looked at Nathaniel, seeing the change in his face. I told you, she said softly. Nathaniel closed the notebook carefully and slid it back toward Malik. Do you know how good you are? Malik looked almost confused by the question. At math? Nathaniel nodded. Malik gave a small shrug. It is just numbers. Nathaniel shook his head slowly. No, son. It is not. For the first time, Malik looked up fully, his eyes locking with Nathaniel's. And in that moment, Nathaniel saw it clearly. Not just intelligence. Potential. Raw, unprotected, buried under years of survival. The kind of potential the world often missed because it came dressed in worn shoes and a torn hoodie. Nathaniel glanced at the rain outside, the city rushing past without seeing what sat inside this booth. But Nathaniel saw it now. And he was beginning to understand that some of the greatest minds were not hidden in boardrooms or universities. Sometimes they were sitting in diners, eating grilled cheese, carrying their future in a weathered notebook. The pie sat untouched between them, steam fading into the warm diner air, but Nathaniel barely noticed it. His eyes stayed on Malik's notebook, on the pages filled with clean logic and disciplined thought, each equation written with the kind of patience that could not be taught in classrooms alone. Outside, the rain had softened into a steady mist, streaking the window and blurring the city lights into long rivers of gold. Inside, something had shifted at the table. Nathaniel leaned forward, folding his hands together. Malik, he said carefully, when was the last time you were in school? Malik stared into his hot chocolate, turning the mug slightly between his hands. About a year ago. Nathaniel frowned. Why did you stop? Malik was quiet for a moment. The diner noise filled the silence, forks scraping plates, coffee pouring somewhere behind them. Could not keep up with attendance, Malik said. No address. No stable place to sleep. Teachers stopped expecting me. Nathaniel felt that sentence settle heavier than it should have. Not because it was shocking. Because it was ordinary. Too ordinary. Evelyn looked down, her fingers wrapped around her tea like she was holding on to guilt. Nathaniel looked at Malik again. And if you could go back? Malik gave a small laugh, but it was not bitter. Just tired. School does not wait for people like me. Nathaniel shook his head. That is not what I asked? Malik looked up. For the first time all night, there was something fragile in his eyes. Hope trying not to exist. Nathaniel knew that look too. It was dangerous. Hope could hurt worse than disappointment. If you could go back, Nathaniel repeated. Would you? Malik looked at the notebook beside him, his thumb brushing the worn edge of the cover. Yes, he said quietly. Every day. Nathaniel nodded once. Then he made the decision the same way he had made every life-changing decision in business. Fast. Clear. Certain. Then go back. Malik blinked. What? Nathaniel sat straighter. I own 3 private academies and fund scholarships at 6 others. I can get you enrolled. Malik stared at him like the words were too big to fit in the room. Why? Nathaniel asked, almost surprised by the question. Because talent matters, Nathaniel said. And because the world has already wasted enough of yours. Malik looked down immediately, his jaw tightening. Nathaniel could see the conflict in him. Not disbelief. Fear. Evelyn leaned forward. Malik, she said gently, this is your chance. Malik shook his head slightly. Nothing is free. Nathaniel went still. There it was. The truth beneath all of it. Life had taught Malik that every kindness had a bill attached. Nathaniel softened his voice. You are right. Nothing is free. Malik looked at him carefully. So what do you want? Nathaniel answered without hesitation. For you to use what you have. Malik stared at him. Nathaniel tapped the notebook. That mind. That discipline. That heart. He leaned closer. I am not offering charity. He paused. I am offering opportunity. The words hung between them. Heavy. Real. Malik's fingers tightened around the mug. Nathaniel could almost hear the walls inside the boy pressing back, years of survival telling him to refuse, to stay small, to trust no one. But then Evelyn reached across the table and placed her hand gently over Malik's wrist. Heroes deserve a future too, she whispered. Malik looked at her, then at Nathaniel. The rain outside kept falling, quiet now, like the city itself was listening. And for the first time in years, Nathaniel Brooks was not negotiating a deal, closing an acquisition, or calculating profit. He was sitting across from a boy the world had almost erased, offering him a doorway back into life, and waiting to see if he would walk through it. Malik did not answer right away. The diner seemed quieter now, the sound of rain against the windows softer, like the whole city had slowed down to wait with him. His fingers rested on the notebook, tracing the worn edge where tape held the cover together. Nathaniel watched him carefully, not pushing. Across from them, Evelyn's eyes stayed warm, patient, the kind of look that asked for nothing except honesty. Malik swallowed and stared at the steam rising from his mug. "What if I fail?" he asked at last, his voice almost lost beneath the low hum of the room. Nathaniel leaned back and looked at him for a long moment. It was not the question of someone afraid of work. It was the question of someone afraid of hope. Nathaniel understood that better than Malik knew. "Then you fail," Nathaniel said simply. "And then you try again." Malik frowned. "It is not that easy." Nathaniel nodded. "No. It is not." He looked out the rain-streaked window, remembering the years before Brooks Capital existed, when he had slept in office chairs and counted coins for coffee. "The hardest part is believing you deserve the chance to try." Malik looked at him, really looked at him this time, like he was measuring whether the man across from him understood struggle, or just spoke about it. Nathaniel reached into his coat and pulled out a business card, setting it on the table beside Malik's notebook. Clean white. Heavy stock. Simple black letters. Nathaniel Brooks. "Tomorrow morning," Nathaniel said. 9 o'clock. My office. We start paperwork for school, housing, and everything else. Malik stared at the card but did not touch it. "Housing?" Nathaniel nodded. "You cannot solve equations in a train station." Evelyn smiled faintly, a softness in her face Nathaniel had not seen since the sidewalk. Malik looked overwhelmed now, like too many doors had opened at once. "Why me?" he asked again, quieter this time. Nathaniel did not hesitate. "Because you stopped." Malik frowned. Nathaniel pointed toward him. "You saw someone hurting and you stopped. In a city where most people keep walking." His voice lowered. "That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." Malik looked down, and Nathaniel could see the fight inside him. Pride against possibility. Survival against trust. Slowly, Malik reached out and picked up the card. His fingers trembled just enough to show how much it meant. Evelyn let out a breath she had been holding. Outside, the rain finally began to ease, leaving the glass streaked and shining under the streetlights. Nathaniel stood and pulled cash from his wallet, leaving it beneath the check without looking at the total. He grabbed his coat and looked at Malik. "Keep the notebook dry," he said. Malik gave the smallest smile. "Always do." Nathaniel nodded. He believed him. As they stepped outside, the cold air hit again, sharp and clean after the warmth of the diner. The city glowed fresh from rain, the sidewalks shining like mirrors. Nathaniel called for his driver and watched as Evelyn wrapped Malik's coat tighter around herself. "Take her home first," Malik said. Nathaniel looked at him. "And you?" Malik adjusted his duffel bag and looked down at the card in his hand, turning it over like proof of something impossible. For the first time that night, his voice carried something new. Not caution. Not fear. Something quieter. Something stronger. "Tomorrow," Malik said. Nathaniel smiled, the kind of smile that came from certainty, not business. As the black car pulled away into the wet Manhattan night, Nathaniel watched Malik standing under the streetlight, notebook in one hand, his future in the other. And for the first time in years, Nathaniel Brooks understood that sometimes the most important investment was not in companies, markets, or numbers. Sometimes it was in a person the world almost forgot, until one act of kindness forced everyone to see him.